It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Wednesday, March 8th. Your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that is a little surprised by a college free agent signing.
Oh, you're not surprised by the way the game went. I see.
Yeah, we are going to get into that game. We are going to talk about the signing of Will Zmolek and get to your mailbag questions all on today's show.
Your Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, I am Rachel Donner. You can find me on Twitter at rmiriam. I'm here as always with the brilliant Russ Cohen, who is on Twitter at Sportsology. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. You can follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at Locked On Flyers. That is where we post about our latest episodes and Flyers news. You can also email the show at lockedonflyers@gmail to get your questions answered, like we are going to do today. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit fanduel.com/lockedon today to get started. Locked On Flyers is free and available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen. So subscribe. You'll get all of our episodes here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Plus, we're over on YouTube, so subscribe there as well. Russ, we will get into that Zmolek signing. We're going to do that next segment and talk about Flyers defensive depth. Got to talk about that disaster of a game in Tampa last night. Several things went wrong in that one, and emotions were high, the hits were low, and maybe I want to leave it at that. But
Special teams were bad.
Oh God,
Coaching was
yeah,
bad.
yeah, a lot of things
Let's start with the
happened.
coaching, honestly,
Sure,
because
let's
um,
do it.
fans are really upset. They're upset with the 11-7. They don't get it. But then they're upset because, all right, look, you know that Tanner Lazinski and Brendan Lemieux are not fully in game shape, yet you are willing to sit Joel Farabee and Travis Sanheim for a complete period each. So then what happens in the third period? The two guys that we just talked about are like completely gassed. Some of the team is completely gassed. And this has happened before. This has happened at least 4 or 5 times this season. Does this help create a culture, or is this just help you lose a game? I scratch my head sometimes, and I understand why fans ask me, message me, and are confused about it. I really get it.
Yeah, and I have to question it because Torts talked specifically about the 11-7 before the game at morning skate, right? And he talked specifically about not just wanting to double shift Owen Tippett, but there were some other guys that he wanted to get more minutes for. And this game, all he really did was double shift Owen Tippett. I mean,
Right.
because he benched Farabee, there were some issues there, and a couple other guys got some more ice time, but if he had not done that with Farabee, Tippett would have been the one that still would have gotten all that extra ice time. He had the most time on ice of any player in the game for the
Yeah.
Flyers, and a forward should not have that,
No.
right?
No.
That's ridiculous. I don't care how much you wanna see what he can do. He
It's
should
just
not have the most
overloading.
ice time. Yeah.
It's overloading. And we talked about that, last show, and it's what happened again on this game. But again, if you're going to play 11-7 but only play Justin Braun 8 minutes and 52 seconds, what exactly are you accomplishing here?
Yeah, if you're doing it to double shift forwards, just double shift the forwards and
Right.
still have 6D. You can do
Right.
that. That is
Yeah,
possible.
you could do anything you want. You're the coach.
Yeah.
All right. So now I'm not sure I've ever seen a play like Tony DeAngelo with a dirty spear while a team has the advantage, the extra man advantage, and has pulled the goalie. towards the end of the game. I don't know if I've ever seen that, Rachel. And I've been watching hockey for a lot of years. I watched hockey through the 70s when things were dirty like that. And this was bad. This is a bad look. It was a bad look for him losing it the way he did before he left the ice. That's not going to help him get fewer games on a suspension. He's definitely going to get fined. I wouldn't be shocked if he gets suspended. And he made Corey Perry look like the victim. That's hard to do.
It is really hard to do. And, Tony DeAngelo went off post game and said, "Oh, he tried to slash my stick out of my hands. He's all talk and no action.
Yeah.
And I was trying to fight him all game and he wouldn't go." Well, why were you trying to fight him all game?
Right. You're trying
Why?
to either win a game or get back in the game. Why were you trying to fight him?
Yeah. So
See,
I
that's
don't
what I'm
think
saying. That's the
he's not
mindset.
doing himself any favors. I'll tell you
No,
that.
but this is the mindset sometimes of Tony DeAngelo. And people wonder, why I would bring his name up on the shows and why I mention him for certain things. I only mention him when he does these things. He does them.
Yeah.
He causes them.
It's undisciplined. And you're right. The timing of what he did was just lazy. And he wasn't thinking. And that's the trend with him. That in these moments, when he should be doing something positive for the team, no matter how frustrated you are, you don't give up that offensive advantage.
No. And again, I understand why the whole Lightning team jumped him. I do. Because they
Yeah.
saw what happened and they were like, are you kidding me? Like the Lightning didn't even play dirty in this game. They wouldn't have done anything.
No.
And I get it. Sometimes hockey's frustrating. I get it. And I get it that they were frustrated that they had the man advantage and things weren't, didn't really have a chance to get going, but things weren't going well. The feeling probably wasn't going that it was going to go well. But still, like that's your answer? Come on.
Because certainly, as we said, special teams were not the answer
No.
either. They were 0 for 3 on the power play and 3 for 6 on the penalty kill, which at least 2 of those 3 were absolutely atrocious. And it really just
They were letting
honestly,
guys set up double slot and
I
Carter
know.
Hart. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, the defense in front of him just did nothing to prevent the Lightning from getting set up so easily with multiple options, like
Yeah.
you said.
Yeah. I mean, again, the Lightning were without Victor Hedman, their headspace wasn't great. The Flyers certainly helped them get back on track. I'll say that.
Yeah, and it was such a shame because Flyers did get off to a good start
They did.
in the game. And if they had just continued even 80% of that throughout the rest of the game, it would have been a lot closer than
Yeah.
it turned out to be. And, obviously the benching situation didn't help with that because it changed their defensive structure on like multiple shifts. So that was a problem. It also kind of took away from what was a pretty solid game for Morgan Frost.
It was a really good game for him. One of the
Yeah.
few. One of
Yeah.
the few. He rose to the occasion. The only thing is I kind of wonder they're going to have to change something up with Joel Farabee because we're just watching him like really twist in the wind. I know he had a setup on the Morgan Frost goal, and that's great. But with
There's a
these,
couple of penalties that got him benched. I
the
mean,
penalties got him benched, and then you could see anytime he can't score, it's just 100% frustration. And I know the old school answer is like, hey, let's just throw him out there. He'll just, he'll get through this. But, it's 23 games. So you do kind of wonder is maybe give him different line mates, give him a different role, maybe switch the position on the wing, do something to maybe help him mentally because he is really suffering out there, like really suffering for a hockey player.
yeah. Yeah, you can just see it that every time, whether, he misses the net or goalie makes a great save, like, not all of what he's doing is bad, right?
No.
He's making some incredible plays and really trying to set himself up well and just isn't going. And it's
You
just
got to remember,
brutal
he's
to
still a
watch.
young guy. He is.
Mm-hmm.
He's not fully developed as a hockey player yet.
Absolutely. Man, that was a tough one to watch.
It's not going to be
gotta
any better in
say.
Carolina. Matter of fact, it's probably going to get worse in Carolina. the only positive is DeAngelo will probably not play in that game, so maybe they can't go 11-7 and maybe Kiefer Bellows will have to play.
Well, we'll see what
Maybe.
happens with that. Obviously, we're recording post game, so we won't know about any
No.
of that until later on. But yeah, a frustrating effort overall, and on to the next one, as they say.
Yep.
We will talk about the signing of Smolik and defensive depth coming up next.
The midway point of the NBA season is here, and now is the perfect time to download FanDuel's America's #1 sportsbook. Because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000, that's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line to point scorers and threes drained. For point scorers, you may want to look at the Phoenix Suns. They've added a lot of talent. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same game parlay. So don't miss the chance to get your no sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go fanduel.com/lockedon. That's fanduel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA.
So, Will Zmolek, Russ, we have a new signing from the college pool of players. Usually, these signings start a little bit later in
Well, it
the
depends how long a
season.
team stays in it. Teams
Well,
are
that's true.
eliminated. Yeah.
That is true. This is an ELC that's starting next year, but he will be reporting to the Phantoms on a tryout contract for the remainder of this season, so they can keep it separate and not burn the ELC
Right.
this year. He is a right-handed defenseman, which is an interesting position to sign somebody at this level, based on the conversation we had yesterday on the
And it's
show.
going to come up again now.
Yeah, we'll get into it, but very interesting.
Yeah, I spoke to someone about this as well, and the feeling this season, just as we thought, is Wyatt Wiley's kind of getting the short end of this. And when he plays, he's good, but he's not playing regularly enough. And now this is definitely going to cut into his playing time. Uh, Look, he's a pretty good player, Smolik. He was at Bemidji, played a lot of minutes, played power play, played PK. His skating, it's not great. It's good, but it's not great. His positioning needs work. He needs work positioning correctly around the net. I think his stick work could be better around the neck. I think I think the stick work could be better, meaning an active stick in the corner too. I think those are two things that he could really improve on. Besides the skating, he played a lot of minutes, man. In Bemidji, he was playing a load of minutes. So we'll see what he has left, this season. But he's a guy that back checks, and he's a big guy in the USHL. He took a ton of penalty minutes. He's taken a lot there. So unfortunately, this fits a sort of stereotype for what the Flyers are looking for and what Torts is looking for. In the long run, you're just talking about a depth guy who maybe, gets a little NHL time, but that's at the best case scenario.
Yeah, to me, it doesn't seem like this is a guy with, strong NHL potential, that he's a fill-in, a call-up, or, a 7th D kind of guy at the NHL level. I mean, maybe he'll provide some depth for the Phantoms during this playoff run, but I would certainly start with the assumption that he'll play for the Phantoms next year as
Yeah.
well. Um, you're right. This is a pretty typical Flyers kind of signing. I mean, not to mention the fact that he's, a Minnesota boy who went to Bemidji State, 6'3", 195. I mean, that is textbook Flyers signing, especially
Yeah.
with Chuck Fletcher, right?
We'll say Nick Sealerish.
Yes. Nick Sealer light, which is very bizarre, right?
Yeah, the only difference is Sealer's a lefty, but yeah. So
Yeah.
I look at it. I don't think it's fair when fans just say, well, out of hand, they just look at the numbers and they say, well, he's not that good. He blocks a lot of shots, whatever. You never know what a guy's going to turn into. I mean, I always
Yeah.
will say that. Right now, this is what I see. It doesn't mean he couldn't take a monumental jump, but he's 23, so the odds are against him. But still, if nothing else, it's another Phantoms guy, but it does make me wonder, like, the direction now the Phantoms are going to take next year. And that's where I worry a little bit because Wiley's a better skater than this guy. He
Yeah, and if
is.
you want sort of more offensively oriented defensemen, or at least guys that can do both, this doesn't seem like that gets you
Well,
toward
he
that
did
goal.
both at the college level, but he may not be able to do both well at the AHL level. That's where you have to wait and see.
Yeah, my other question here is why sign him now if he's a guy who's not in huge demand? I mean,
Well,
do
how
you
do you
see
know he's
the
not in huge demand? That's what we don't know. Like there could be another team
hmm,
after him. Like
that's
again,
fair enough.
here's where I want to caution people. Just because he doesn't show up on somebody's list doesn't mean people don't know about him. I put together a list with a few other scouts at EP Rinkside a couple of weeks ago and, spoke to a lot of different people. No, he was not on that list, but that still doesn't mean anything. I cover players at Princeton that probably wouldn't be on the list. But yet, if somebody scouts a guy at Princeton who, by the way, have moved on in the playoffs, and let's say they keep moving on
Mhm.
and they like him, guess what? They may sign him. And guess what? He may not be on the list.
Yeah, I mean that is certainly true. So, yeah, definitely don't want to like judge him and say this is a bad
Right.
signing, and that
Right.
is not what I'm saying by any
No,
means.
I
It
know
just it,
that.
it just seemed to come out of nowhere, right?
Yeah, yeah, but that's how
Um,
these college signings are a lot of times. And again, I'll take the wait and see approach. If nothing else, I mean, again, I think something else that always does get lost in translation here, especially on a bad team, and right now the Flyers are a bad team, is that not everybody is, signed with the idea that they're going to be with the Flyers. A lot of, you still have to work on the AHL roster too. And the one thing we'll at least say about Chuck Fletcher is he has put more effort into the Phantoms this year than he has this entire time that he's been here.
yeah, I would agree with that. And, if this can help the Phantoms in their playoff run to have him here now, and if getting him here now required giving him the ELC for next year and burns a contract, maybe that's a price Chuck Fletcher is willing to pay, right?
Right. Right. Yeah. And that's what, so that's, because again, there's always a market for at least 7 to 10 college free agents every year, so, maybe we just didn't know about this one. Maybe there was another team.
How does this reset kind of right-handed defenseman depth on this team? I mean, we talked about Wyatt Wiley a little bit, and especially more so on yesterday's show. If you haven't listened, I go back and listen to that because we talked about defensive pairings on the
Yeah.
Phantoms in general and how, getting pushed to third pairing minutes for Wiley was really like not ideal in terms of seeing if, he really has a shot to progress in his development. And this kind of stirs that pot a little bit more, but then also what does that do in general to the right-handed defensive depth, which had been probably pretty weak, especially because they didn't draft David Jiricek, which I'm going to bring up.
You have every right to. I just look at it this way. I am not going to get crazy because, gee, I don't know, Rach. I don't know if you know this, but the Flyers have a guy up at the Flyers level who's playing the opposite side. Can you imagine? I think his name is Cam York. It happens.
That is true.
So sometimes, we get caught up too much with that. I don't think he'll upset Ronnie Attard's playing time, who's a righty, and
No.
you know, again, you can't touch Belpedio, but he is a righty. But again, I think if you had to, Belpedio probably could play the other side. He's played hockey long enough that he probably can. So again, much like Cam York. So I say, don't worry about it right this minute. I don't think it's a big deal, but it's a big deal for Wyatt Wiley. I don't expect him to be on the team next year. I just have this feeling.
Yeah, I think that would definitely be like upsetting to me if I were Wyatt Wiley and I would
Yeah,
try to go to different pastures. I don't see the Flyers giving him an offer. He's an
no,
RFA
yeah.
this coming off season, so I would pretty much assume that he is on his way out the door.
Yep, that's sort of the way I look at it.
All right. Well, we'll continue to monitor things on the college potential signee front and see what other guys are out there. And that's coincidentally part of our mailbag, which we will get to coming up next. Today's episode is brought to you by Built Bar. Looking for a delicious treat but don't want all the fat and calories? Then you gotta try a Built Bar. I know my goal is to eat a little healthier this year, and if you're like me, where you want to eat healthier but don't want to compromise taste, I have got just the thing for you. You got to try Built. With Built, healthy is actually tasty. And what makes it so good? Well, for starters, all Built bars are covered in 100% real chocolate. They come in unbelievably delicious flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, and coconut almond. And what's better is that they are truly healthy with 130 calories and 4 grams of sugar, but 17 grams of protein. And now you don't have to wait around to get a box in the mail. For years, we've been talking about ordering yours at built.com. Now you can get them at Walmart or Sam's Club. That's right. Head to your nearest Walmart today. Go to the pharmacy section and grab yourself a box of Built bars. You can get 4-bar boxes of cookies and cream, double chocolate, or coconut puffs. If you're close to a Sam's Club, run in and grab a 13-bar box with our hit flavors, brownie batter, and churro. You can thank me later. Switching over to our mailbag, another trade question to start off from CMAC. Will the Flyers consider trading Carter Hart this offseason?
They'll only consider trading him if he gives them the vibe when they speak to him that maybe he's on the fence about re-signing, getting a new contract. So if he says he wants to come back, obviously that makes it moot. And I don't think they're going to just look to trade him. I don't think they're that sold on Sam Ersson yet. And I don't think it's enough cap space that he's the guy all of a sudden that's where they're going to get their cap space from. I just don't see it.
Yeah, it is interesting because I think if you look at these past 2 seasons, Carter Hart has been one of the steady presences on this team,
Yep.
right? And certainly reliable. Wouldn't say like all-star goaltender, but certainly reliable, kept them in a whole bunch of games. And he's making under 4 million, just under 4
Yeah.
million on the cap. And that is relatively inexpensive for your number one goaltender, right? So if he's looking to stick around beyond that, given how the Flyers have played the last 2 years and how they're projecting for next year, to stay beyond that because the Flyers are going to take longer to get where they need to go. Like, it's going to take more time. And Carter Hart's going to be like, you need to give me hardship money for this, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no doubt. But right now, I don't see it.
Right. I think this is something where the communication continues all through next season, and it'll probably, if assuming they will re-sign him, it'll be, late in next season before that contract gets
Unless
done.
he's one of those that says, I don't want to talk contract during the season, then it's going to have to happen before the season starts.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Jayhawk wants to know, will the Flyers have any big free agent signings?
It'll depend on the cap. If they're able to move somebody off the cap, then I think they would look to do one major free agent signing. I would say they probably would be looking for someone who could score because they just can't score. You don't know what's going to happen with Joel Farabee next year. You assume he'll be healthier, but he's really snake bitten. He's gone 22 games. Like, that's a long time without a goal. I would never have imagined that would happen to him. And we could say it's his neck right now, but next year it could just be him. So you don't know that. You don't know Couturier and Atkinson's status. So they're going to need more goal scoring. It's not like Noah Cate's going to become a big time goal scorer. He's not. And even if Tippett picks it up a little bit more, there's going to be needing more help. So I think that's what you could look at if they were to clear some space, that they would have to go and get that. So that's my guess. So I think, but it's sort of predicated on losing some cap space unless they're going to get somebody on the cheap for 1 year, but I don't foresee them doing that.
That is a good foreshadowing of our episode tomorrow, where we are going to dig into the cap
We are.
and what it means for the Flyers. So stay tuned for that. And yeah, I think it's definitely a cap issue in terms of big free agent signings. They'd have to clear a lot of space. And I just don't know that the Flyers are necessarily a destination right now either. So I think that that's a big factor. Kind of relating to our previous segment, Will via email wants to know, now that we're staring down the barrel of this stretch run, are there any other college players who you can see the Flyers signing and giving a look-see?
Well, we could talk about Jay O'Brien. He's the most obvious one that I think they should sign, but I think they don't have any interest in him. Like, I don't know. I mean, that's my feeling on that one. As far as the rest, I would say there could be one on Princeton, but I would like to see how their playoffs go before I throw the name out there. Otherwise, it's going to be hard because, again, while they could offer some playing time, they do have a coach that's a little bit on the hard end, and that's not necessarily the way a lot of times you want a college free agent to go. So they want to go where they feel like they can play the most and stay up in the NHL. And with Torts, that's going to kind of be up in the air. So if you're asking me now, do I think they'll have any other college free agent signings? I'm going to say no, but I'm also going to say they should sign O'Brien, and maybe there could be one other, but I don't think it will be any of the big names that you're asking me for or are currently out there.
Yeah, I just see them signing, top level AHL players to fill out the phantoms like they usually do.
Yeah.
There's always a shuffle between the different AHL teams where people go around, and then maybe one of them gets a two-way contract.
Right.
But I think that's more the direction that they'll go. If they sign any college players, it'll be kind of lesser known guys that'll
Mhm.
be with the fandoms anyway, just like we talked about with Smolik.
Yeah.
That is my supposition. Next question: will the Flyers improve next season in record, or will they drop down again?
Well, based on everything that is going on, plus the minus what I see and what they might be able to do, I think they're going to go down record wise. I do. I think it's going to be a step back because, not that's because they don't have JVR. That's not the reason, and not because they're not going to have Justin Braun, but just for all those other reasons that I said. There's still a lot of things up in the air with this team, and even though John Tortorella is the coach and they're going to play hard, I still think they're going to fall shorter than even how they fall this year. It's just, again, a lot of these teams in division are getting better. There'll be a few that fall back, maybe the Capitals, and there'll be another one or two, maybe Florida does, but they've seemed to pick it up again. So it's just a tough spot in the conference and in the division for the Flyers. So I don't think it's looking good at the moment as far as them being better.
Yeah, and they did improve this season.
Yes.
I mean, not by a lot, but they did.
Right.
And so it's like, are they at a ceiling with the personnel they have now? And I would tend to say yes to
Yeah.
that. So, unless things change roster-wise significantly, I'm not prepared to say they'll be any better than they were this year.
Yeah.
Or any worse, to be honest. All right. Wrapping up with our Flyers fun thing. Our friend J.R. Avon, who I always keep an eye on
Mhm.
because he's a fun player. Again, a free agent signing for the Flyers that's turned out well in terms of his development with Peterborough. And last Friday, he scored an incredible shorthanded goal that involved him spinning, going down to his knees, deking a couple of guys.
Yeah, he comes down to his knees, he comes back up, he peeks around the guy. It's a hell of a move, man.
It is a great move, and so you always love to see that in
Yes.
your prospect pool. Some not only is he talented, but also can have some fun moments.
Some
like
excitement,
this as
some
well.
offense.
Yep. Exactly. And a shortie, which is,
Yes.
Flyers style.
That is Flyer style this year.
Yep, absolutely. All right, that will do it for today's show. We will be back again tomorrow. Like I said, we're going to dig into the Flyers cap situation for next year, talk about how or with who they should clear space and what the strategy should be. It'll be a fun one to get into, so stay tuned for that. As a reminder, we always want to hear from you. And if you want your question answered on the show, like we did today, you can tweet us at Locked On Flyers, email us at lockedonflyers@gmail, or comment over on YouTube. I'm Rachel. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
Thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen today. Now make your next listen Game to Game NHL. It's every moment, every top performance, every result. Locked On Game to Game covers every game across the NHL with local analysis that only Locked On can deliver. It's available on the Locked On NHL feed wherever you get your podcasts. Have a great day, everyone.